Evan Holt had always slept lightly, a habit learned long before he ever left Earth. Even now, inside the polished metal walls of orbital habitat K7, his mind never fully shut down. The station hummed constantly, a low vibration that became part of a person if they lived here long enough. Air recyclers whispered. Gravity plates pulsed softly beneath the floor. To Evan, it was the sound of safety. That night the sound changed. It was not loud. It was not sudden. It was the quiet sense of something being wrong, like realizing you forgot an important detail only after the door has already closed behind you. Evan drifted up from sleep slowly, his thoughts tangled in half-formed dreams of Earth skies and open water. His breathing was calm, but his instincts were already awake. He did not open his eyes at first. The room smelled different, not bad, just unfamiliar. Clean, sharp, almost like cold rain hitting stone. His body went still as his mind caught up. Habitat rooms were sealed environments. Air did not change without reason. Evan's hand twitched near the edge of the bed, close to the emergency comm unit bolted into the wall. Then he felt it. Someone was standing near him. His eyes opened. The lights were dimmed to sleep mode, casting the room in soft blues and grays. At first his mind refused to understand what it saw. A tall, slender figure stood a few steps from the bed, perfectly still. The figure's outline shimmered faintly, as if the air itself bent around her shape. She was not human. Evan sat up too quickly, heart slamming against his ribs. The figure did not move, but her eyes shifted, catching the low light. They reflected like polished crystal, not glowing but deep and aware. Neither of them spoke. Every rule Evan knew screamed at him. Alien residents were not allowed to enter human quarters without explicit permission. Privacy laws on K7 were strict, written in dozens of languages and enforced by station AI without mercy. This was not a mistake. This was a serious violation. "Don't move," Evan said, his voice rough but steady. "Station security is one word away." The alien inclined her head slightly, a slow, deliberate motion. She raised her hands, long-fingered and delicate, palms outward in a universal gesture of peace. Her skin was smooth and pale, marked with faint, shifting patterns that moved like gentle currents under ice. "I will not harm you," she said. Her voice was calm, clear, and perfectly translated by the room's autolingual system. No accent, no distortion. That alone unsettled him. "Then explain why you're here," Evan replied. She hesitated just long enough for him to notice. That pause told him more than any words could have. Whatever her reason was, it was not simple. "My name is Lyrixa," she said. "I reside in the adjacent living unit. I entered because you were calling for help." Evan frowned. "I was." "You were asleep," Lyrixa said. The signal was strong. "There is no signal," Evan said, though doubt crept into his thoughts. "Humans don't emit signals." Lyrix's eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger but in confusion. "All sentient beings emit signals," she said. "Yours are unusual." Before Evan could respond, the lights snapped from dim blue to harsh white. A deep alarm tone rolled through the room. Unauthorized presence detected. The station AI's voice echoed from the walls, calm and absolute. "Remain where you are. Security response in progress." Lyrixa stiffened. "That is unfortunate," she said softly. Evan swung his legs off the bed, keeping his distance. "Unfortunate for you," he said. "You just triggered a diplomatic nightmare." "I am aware," Lyrixa replied. "I accepted the consequences when I crossed your threshold." That made him pause. "You knew this would happen." "Yes." "Then why do it?" Lyrixa looked at him fully then, and for the first time Evan felt something cold settle in his chest. Not fear of her, but fear of what she represented. Her expression was not careless. It was resolute. "Because your species does not know it is vulnerable," she said. The door to Evan's room sealed with a heavy mechanical thud. Red status lights flickered along the frame. The station was locking the area down. "What are you talking about?" Evan asked. Lyrixa stepped back slightly, giving him space without being told. When humans enter your deepest rest state, she said, your neural activity forms a pattern. To my people, it is unmistakable. It is a call. A call to what? Evan asked. To aid, she said. To attention. To intervention. That's impossible, he said, though his voice lacked certainty. If that were true, someone would have noticed by now. Lyrix's gaze shifted just briefly toward the wall. Someone has. The words hung between them like a held breath. Footsteps echoed faintly beyond the sealed door. Security teams were approaching, their movement fast and coordinated. Evan's heart raced, but his mind sharpened. Humans were good at this moment, the space between panic and action. You came in here to warn me, he said. Yes. Why me? You are human, Lyrixa said simply, and you were unprotected. Evan let out a slow breath. Everyone sleeps. Not everyone broadcasts, she replied. The alarm softened as the station AI shifted modes. Containment established. Non-hostile classification pending, the voice announced. Lyrixa closed her eyes briefly as if relieved. Your governing intelligence is efficient, she said. That is good. Focus, Evan said. You said someone else noticed this signal. Lyrixa opened her eyes. There are species aboard this station who do not see calls for aid as moral obligations. Evan felt a chill. Predators. Yes. The word did not need explanation. The door hissed as an outer seal disengaged. Armed security officers stood beyond the transparent barrier, their weapons lowered but ready. Through the glass, Evan could see Commander Reyes, her face tight with concern. Evan, Reyes said through the intercom. Are you hurt? No, he replied. But we need to talk before this goes any further. Lyrixa turned slightly, angling her body so she was visible to the security team without appearing threatening. I will submit to custody, she said calmly, but what I have shared must not be ignored. Commander Reyes studied her for a long moment. That's not your decision, she said, but we'll hear you out. The door opened. Two officers entered, positioning themselves between Evan and Lyrixa without touching her. Restraints were ready but not deployed. The station prided itself on restraint. Violence was always the last option. As Lyrixa was escorted toward the door, she paused and looked back at Evan. You wake easily, she said. That may be why you are still alive. Then she was gone. The room felt emptier than it should have. Evan stood there long after the door sealed again, the alarms fading into silence. His heart slowly returned to a normal rhythm, but his thoughts refused to settle. He replayed her words again and again, searching for exaggeration, for misunderstanding, for anything that made them less dangerous. A call, a signal, a vulnerability hidden inside something as human as sleep. He sat back on the edge of the bed, staring at the place where Lyrixa had stood. Outside his room, the station returned to normal. Lights dimmed. Foot traffic resumed. Life went on. But Evan knew something fundamental had shifted. Humans had always believed their safety came from strength, technology, and numbers. From walls and laws and careful rules written after long wars. No one had ever considered that the most dangerous weakness might be something they did every night, without thought, without fear. Evan lay back down, staring at the ceiling. For the first time since arriving on K7, he did not sleep. The room where Evan waited was small, white, and quiet in a way that felt heavy instead of peaceful. The station called it an observation chamber, but Evan thought of it as a place where time slowed down. The walls curved gently, without corners, and a single table sat in the center. A soft light glowed from the ceiling, never changing brightness, never flickering. There was no clock. Evan sat alone at first, his hands resting on the table, fingers loosely locked together. He had been questioned already by station security, then by medical staff, and finally by the habitat's legal AI. Each time he told the same story. Each time he watched their expressions shift from disbelief to concern. He had not slept since the incident. Every time he closed his eyes, he remembered the smell in the room, the quiet certainty that someone had been standing beside him. His body refused to relax, as if sleep itself had become unsafe. The door slid open without sound. Commander Reyes entered, followed by Lyrixa and two security officers. Lyrixa's hands were free, but small restraint bands glowed faintly around her wrists, ready to activate if needed. She walked calmly, her posture straight, her movements smooth and controlled. Evan stood up. "Sit," Reyes said gently, taking a seat herself. Evan obeyed, though his eyes never left Lyrixa. Lyrixa inclined her head toward him. "You are well," she said. "I'm awake," Evan replied. "That's not the same thing." Reyes looked between them. "This conversation is being recorded," she said. "Station council members are observing remotely. What you say here will shape what happens next, so we're going to be very clear." She turned to Lyrixa. "You entered a human's private space while he was unconscious. That alone is grounds for removal from the station. You claim you did it to respond to a signal. You need to explain that claim in full." Lyrixa folded her hands together. "Of course." She took a slow breath. Evan noticed the faint patterns on her skin shifting, as if responding to her emotions. "My species evolved on a world where survival depended on group awareness," Lyrixa began. "Our neural systems developed the ability to sense distress patterns in others. Over time, this became instinct. When we detect such a signal, we respond. Not doing so is considered a moral failure." Reyes nodded slightly. "You're saying humans produce this signal?" "Yes," Lyrixa said, "but only during a specific neural state." "Sleep," Evan said quietly. "Deep sleep," Lyrixa corrected. "When conscious defenses are lowered." Reyes leaned back. "We've had humans sleeping on mixed-species stations for over 100 years. No one has reported this." Lyrixa's eyes flicked toward her. "Many species cannot perceive it," she said. "Some can, most choose not to speak of it." The room felt colder. "Why?" Reyes asked. "Because the signal is intimate," Lyrixa said carefully. "It reveals vulnerability. To acknowledge it would be to admit that humans are exposed. And predators notice exposed things," Evans said. Lyrixa looked at him. "Yes," Reyes exhaled slowly. "You said someone else noticed." Lyrixa's hands tightened together. "There is a species aboard this station registered as commercial negotiators. They are patient, observant. They have been studying humans quietly." Evan felt his stomach twist. "Studying how?" "Your dreams," Lyrixa said. "Your emotional patterns, your responses to fear." Reyes' jaw tightened. "Name them." "I cannot," Lyrixa replied. "Not without proof. Accusations without evidence lead to conflict." "So instead you break into a human's room," Reyes said. "Yes," Lyrixa said without hesitation, "because that human was being observed." Evan's head snapped up. "Observed how?" Lyrixa met his eyes. "The signal you emitted was being mirrored." "Mirrored?" Reyes asked. "A technique," Lyrixa said. "By reflecting the signal back at the sleeper, the predators can influence dream content. Over time, this creates trust, dependence, and suggestion." Evan felt sick. "You're saying someone was inside my head." "Not inside," Lyrixa said softly, "closer to knocking on the door." The room was silent except for the soft hum of the station. Reyes stood. "This is above my authority," she said, "but if there is even a chance this is true, we need data, proof. Lyrixa, you will cooperate fully with our scientists." "I expected nothing less," Lyrixa said. Reyes turned to Evan. "And you're not going anywhere." "I figured," Evan said. The next days blurred together. Evan was moved to a secured habitation unit near the medical wing. Sensors were installed around his bed, monitoring brain activity, heart rate, and neural emissions at levels he did not understand. Scientists came and went, some human, some alien, all trying to remain calm while studying something none of them had planned for. Lyrixa was brought in often, always under supervision. She explained what she could, translating instinct into data, sensation into language. It was not easy. Many of her explanations relied on concepts humans did not naturally possess. You feel fear as a response, she told them during one session. We feel it as a signal. Evan lay on the bed while machines hummed quietly. So when I sleep, he said, what exactly am I sending? Lyrixa tilted her head. Longing, she said after a moment. Memory. Unresolved tension. Your species processes emotion differently. You do not empty it while awake. Evan laughed once without humor. That sounds about right. They recorded his sleep that night. Evan did not want to, but he forced himself. He lay still as the lights dimmed, his body tense, his mind racing. It took hours before exhaustion pulled him under. The monitors lit up almost immediately. Patterns formed across the screens, waves of activity that made several scientists lean closer. Frequencies rose and fell in complex rhythms. The station AI flagged the readings as unknown. Lyrixa stepped closer to the glass separating the observation room from Evan's chamber. Her expression changed. There, she said softly. That is it. One of the human scientists frowned. It looks like noise. Lyrixa shook her head. It is not noise, she said. It is structure you do not yet recognize. Then something else appeared on the screen, a reflection. The pattern shifted, responding to itself as if something unseen was listening. The room erupted into motion. Alerts sounded, not loud alarms, but urgent warnings. The AI adjusted filters, isolating the signal. The reflection faded, then vanished. Evan woke with a gasp, sitting upright. What happened? He asked, his voice shaking. Reyes was already there, her face pale. Someone tried to connect, she said, and pulled back when we noticed. Lyrix's hands trembled slightly. They are cautious, she said. They did not expect resistance. Evan rubbed his face. So what now? Reyes looked at him. Now we stop being passive. Over the next week, humans across the station were quietly monitored during sleep. The results were consistent. The signal was real. Most species could not detect it, a few could, and one had been using it. But what shocked the council most was not the vulnerability, it was the response. Humans, when made aware of the signal, began to change it. Some did it without trying. Stress altered it. Anger sharpened it. Focus compressed it. The patterns shifted faster than Lyrixa had ever seen in another species. They adapt, she said during a private conversation with Reyes, even in their sleep. Evan became the center of the research, not because he was special, but because he was willing. He learned to meditate before sleeping, to guide his thoughts, to shape the emotions he carried into rest. The signal changed. It grew tighter, sharper, less like a call. More like a challenge, the predators noticed. The reflections returned, stronger this time, probing, testing. And for the first time, instead of fear, Evan felt something else as he slept. Control. When he woke, Lyrixa was watching him through the glass, her expression unreadable. You are doing something new, she said. Evan met her gaze. So are they, he replied. Somewhere in the station, something ancient and patient realized that humans were no longer unaware. And that realization was dangerous. Evan learned quickly that awareness changed everything. Once he understood that sleep was no longer a safe, empty space, his mind refused to drift without direction. The doctors encouraged rest, but rest did not come easily. Every time he closed his eyes, part of him stayed alert, watching his own thoughts as if they belonged to someone else. The station changed too. Lights dimmed more carefully at night. Corridors near human living sections grew quieter. Security patrols increased, though no announcements were made. Officially, nothing was wrong. Unofficially, everyone felt it. Something unseen was moving through the station, something patient and curious. Lyrixa visited Evan often. Sometimes she spoke with the scientists. Sometimes she simply sat across from him in silence, observing the subtle shifts in his behavior. Her presence had become familiar, even comforting, though Evan never forgot how their first meeting had begun. You are shaping it faster than expected, she said during one session. Evan lay on the bed, hands folded over his chest. Sensors traced thin lines of light across his skin. "I'm not trying to," he said. "It just happens." "That is trying," Lyrixa replied. "Your species does not separate intention from instinct as cleanly as others." He glanced at her. "Is that good or bad?" Lyrixa paused. "That depends on what you become." That night Evan dreamed. He stood in an open field beneath a dark sky. There were no stars, only movement like shadows sliding across the air. He felt the familiar pull, the sense of being noticed. But this time, instead of shrinking from it, he focused. He remembered fear. Not panic, but the sharp, clear fear that came before action. He remembered standing on the edge of unknown things. He remembered choosing to step forward anyway. The signal changed. In the observation room, monitors spiked. Patterns tightened into sharp waves, no longer drifting aimlessly. The reflection appeared almost instantly, but it did not feel the same. The reflection hesitated. Evan felt it too, a faint resistance like pressure meeting pressure. For the first time he pushed back. The dream shifted. The shadows recoiled, pulling away from him as if startled. Evan woke suddenly, breath fast but steady. "What did I do?" he asked, sitting up. Ray's stared at the screens, disbelief written across her face. "You scared them," she said. Lyrix's eyes were wide. "You asserted presence," she said. "They did not expect that." Evan ran a hand through his hair. "They've been doing this for a long time, haven't they?" "Yes," Lyrixa said quietly. "They rely on stillness, on the sleeper not knowing they are seen." "Well," Evan said, "now they know we know." That was the problem. Within days, the predators changed tactics. The reflections became subtler, quieter, barely detectable. They no longer pushed directly. Instead, they brushed the edges of human dreams, testing responses, looking for weakness. Humans responded in kind. Once word spread through trusted channels, volunteers came forward. Soldiers, engineers, artists, people used to mental discipline or emotional control. They trained before sleep, guided by human specialists and Lyrix's insights. Fear was shaped. Anger was focused. Hope was sharpened into something deliberate. The signals shifted across the station, no longer uniform, no longer passive. To the predators, it was like walking into a dark forest where every shadow suddenly watched back. One night, something went wrong. Evan was dreaming again, standing in the same dark field when the pressure increased suddenly. The reflection surged forward, stronger than before, overwhelming his control. Pain flashed through his head, sharp and disorienting. He cried out. Alarms sounded instantly. Medical staff rushed in as Evan woke, gasping, clutching his temples. "They're pushing," he said through clenched teeth. "They're trying to break through." Lyrixa stood rigid near the doorway. "They are desperate," she said. "You are no longer prey. You are interference." Rays turned to her. "What happens when predators are cornered?" Lyrixa did not answer immediately. "They reveal themselves," she said at last. The station council convened in emergency session. Evidence was presented. Data patterns mirrored signals, behavioral shifts among certain non-human residents. Still, proof was thin. The predators were careful, hiding behind legality and neutrality. But humans had one advantage the predators had underestimated. They talked. They shared experiences, patterns, emotions. They connected the dots faster than any external observer could. Where one human felt pressure, another noticed timing. Where one dream shifted, another recorded a similar change. The picture became clearer. A delegation was sent to confront the suspected species under the guise of trade negotiation. Evan was not supposed to be involved. He went anyway. The meeting chamber was large and open, designed to discourage aggression. The alien representatives sat calmly, their forms tall and elegant, their expressions unreadable. They spoke politely, their voices smooth and practiced. Evan stood behind Rays, silent, watching. As the discussion unfolded, Evan felt it again. A faint pull, not from sleep. From awareness. The predator's eyes flicked toward him just for a moment. The connection snapped into place. They recognized him. Evan met their gaze and did something reckless. He focused. Not asleep, fully awake. The signal was weaker while conscious, but it was still there, buried beneath thought and emotion. He reached for it, drawing it forward, shaping it with intent. The alien flinched. Just a subtle shift, barely noticeable but real. Reyes saw it. That was a reaction, she said coldly. The predator recovered instantly. We do not understand, it said smoothly. You do, Evan said. Every eye in the room turned toward him. You've been listening to us while we sleep, Evan continued. Learning, nudging. Waiting for us to trust the wrong dreams. The predator tilted its head. An accusation without evidence. Evan smiled faintly. You reacted, he said. That's evidence enough for us. The meeting ended without violence, but the balance had shifted. That night the predators made their move. Across the station, multiple humans reported intense dream pressure, stronger than ever before. The predators were no longer subtle. They were trying to overwhelm, but humans were ready. Instead of resisting individually, they synchronized. Through shared training and emotional alignment, their signals merged into patterns of shared presence. Not a single voice, but a chorus. Fear layered with resolve. Vulnerability wrapped in awareness. The predators pushed and found something unexpected. Resistance that adapted in real time. The pressure faltered. Reflections shattered under the complexity of human response. Some predators retreated. Others panicked, revealing themselves through uncontrolled signal spikes. Security moved fast. By morning, several non-human residents were detained. Evidence flooded in, no longer hidden. The station council acted decisively, expelling the predators and issuing alerts to other habitats. Evan sat in the observation chamber again, exhausted but alive. Lyrixa stood beside him. You changed the rules, she said. Evan shook his head. We didn't even know there were rules. That is why you are dangerous, Lyrixa replied. You write them as you go. Evan looked out through the glass at the station beyond. Humans walked the corridors, tired but standing taller than before. We're still vulnerable, he said. Yes, Lyrixa agreed. But now you are aware. Evan closed his eyes briefly, not to sleep, but to feel the quiet hum of the station, the presence of others like him. The predators were gone, but the galaxy had learned something important. Humans did not stay prey for long. The station did not celebrate. There were no announcements, no lights, no speeches. On the surface, life on orbital habitat K7 returned to normal. Ships docked and departed. Markets reopened. Schedules resumed. Anyone watching from the outside would have seen a place that had survived a problem and moved on. But the people inside knew better. Sleep was different now. Humans still rested, still dreamed, but never without awareness. The idea that sleep was a passive act had been quietly erased. Every human on the station carried the same knowledge. Vulnerability did not disappear just because the threat was gone. It only waited. Evan felt it most clearly. He was no longer under constant monitoring, but sensors remained in his room, silent and ready. He had volunteered to keep them, not out of fear but responsibility. What had started with him had spread outward, and he did not want to be the one who looked away first. Lyrixa visited less often now. When she did, it was usually in the station's garden ring, where artificial sunlight warmed living plants imported from dozens of worlds. The space helped many species think more clearly. Humans liked it because it felt almost like Earth. You are quieter, Lyrixa said one day as they walked along a path lined with tall green leaves. I'm tired, Evan replied. Not the bad kind, the kind you get after a long run. Lyrixa studied him. You pushed yourself beyond instinct, she said. Many species cannot do that without breaking. Humans break all the time, Evan said. We just put ourselves back together differently each time. She seemed to consider that. That may explain why the predators failed, she said. Evan stopped walking. You don't think they're finished? No, Lyrixa said honestly. They have been exposed here, but knowledge spreads faster than fear. Evan looked up at the artificial sky. So others will come. Others will prepare, Lyrixa corrected. The station council understood this as well. Within days of the expulsions, messages were sent to human worlds and allied habitats. Not warnings meant to scare, but information meant to prepare. Data was shared openly. Sleep studies were expanded, training programs were created. They called it the Human Adaptability Doctrine. The idea was simple. Humans would not try to erase the signal. They would learn to live with it, shape it, and use it. Sleep was no longer treated as absence. It became another environment to operate in. Evan participated in the first official training group. The sessions were quiet, almost boring on the surface. Breathing exercises, memory control, emotional focus. Things humans had practiced in different forms for centuries, now given a new purpose. Fear is not the enemy, one instructor said. Unawareness is. Evan understood that deeply. When he slept now, he did not drift. He entered. The dream space changed again. The dark field returned, but it was no longer empty. Shapes stood at the edges, not predators, not allies, but impressions of other human minds. Not connected directly, but close enough to feel. Shared presence. It was not telepathy. There were no words. Just the certainty that others were there, awake in their own way. For the first time since leaving Earth, Evan felt truly surrounded. The predators did not return, but something else did. 3 weeks after the expulsions, a deep space relay picked up unusual traffic. Not hostile, not friendly, curious, observational, species that had heard rumors, species that had dismissed humans as physically fragile, emotionally unstable, and strategically loud. They were watching now. The station council debated how much to reveal. In the end, humans decided to do what they always did best. They showed the truth. Delegations arrived. Calm, cautious, polite. They asked questions about human biology, psychology, neural patterns. They wanted to understand the change. Evan was asked to speak at one of the sessions. He did not feel qualified. "You are not here because you are special," Reyes told him. "You are here because you were first." The chamber was filled with representatives from half a dozen species. Evan stood at the center, hands clasped behind his back, feeling more exposed than he ever had during sleep. "We didn't evolve to be strong like some of you," he said simply. "We didn't evolve with natural armor or shared minds. We evolved with fear, imagination, and a need to understand what scares us." One of the aliens tilted its head. "Fear is a weakness." Evan nodded. "Only if you let it be." He explained how humans adapted once they understood the threat. How awareness turned vulnerability into information. How information became choice. "We don't close doors," Evan said. "We learn how to stand in the doorway." Lyrixa watched from the side, her expression thoughtful. After the session, she approached Evan. "You are changing how others see your species," she said. Evan shrugged. "We're just being honest." "That is rarely just anything," Lyrixa replied. Not everyone was pleased. Some species viewed the human adaptability doctrine as dangerous. A sleeping species that could influence its own unconscious signals was unpredictable, hard to read, harder to control. Whispers spread. Humans noticed and adapted again. Instead of hiding their abilities, humans standardized them, shared techniques openly, published research. Invited oversight. Transparency became a shield. If everyone knew what humans could do, there would be less room for fear. It worked, mostly. Then came the incident. A cargo vessel docked unexpectedly, claiming emergency repairs. Its crew was mixed species, legally registered with no prior issues. Protocol allowed entry. That night, 3 humans reported dream disturbances. Not strong, not aggressive, familiar. Evan woke instantly. The pressure was light, almost cautious, testing the edges of his awareness. He did not push back, he listened. The signal was not predatory, it was curious. He reported it immediately. Security moved fast but carefully. The vessel was isolated, its crew questioned. One member admitted the truth under pressure. They were researchers, not hunters. They had heard rumors of human dream adaptation and wanted to study it directly. The council was furious. Reyes addressed the chamber herself. "You do not experiment on people while they sleep," she said. "Not anymore, not ever." The researchers were expelled but not punished further. That decision surprised many. Evan understood it. Humans were sending a message. Curiosity was acceptable. Violation was not. Afterward, Lyrixa spoke quietly to Evan. "You could have demanded harsh consequences," she said. Evan shook his head. "Fear-based rules don't last, boundaries do." She looked at him with something like respect. "Your species learns quickly," she said. "We have to," Evan replied. "We don't get many second chances." That night, Evan slept deeply. The dream space was calm. No pressure, no shadows, just the quiet presence of awareness, like standing watch over a city that trusted him. For the first time since the beginning, he rested without tension. Somewhere beyond the station, in the vast silence between stars, information traveled. Humans were not dominant. Humans were not harmless. They were adaptive, and that made them something entirely new in the galaxy. When Evan woke, sunlight filtered through the station's transparent panels. He stretched, feeling human in the simplest way. Sleep had not been taken from them. It had been claimed. And the galaxy would never look at sleeping humans the same way again. The galaxy did not change all at once. Change never came that way. It arrived slowly, through careful observation, through quiet shifts in behavior, through decisions made in small rooms by people who understood what was at stake. Orbital Habitat K7 became known not as a battlefield or a disaster site, but as a turning point. A place where something subtle had been noticed, understood, and reshaped. Evan Holt stayed. He was offered transfers, promotions, speaking roles across human space. He declined most of them. He did not see himself as a symbol, and he did not want to become one. Symbols were too easy to misunderstand. Instead, he worked. His role changed from subject to advisor. He sat with researchers, helped refine training methods, and spoke with new arrivals who struggled to sleep after hearing the truth. He never told them to stop being afraid. He told them to pay attention to it. "Fear is information," he would say. "Listen before you react." Humans across multiple stations learned the same lesson in their own ways. Some used discipline and structure. Others used creativity, music, memory, or repetition. There was no single method, and that itself became a strength. Human sleep signals grew complex, layered, and unpredictable. No one could map them completely. Lyrixa prepared to leave the station. Her mission as an envoy had ended, and her people had formally concluded their involvement. Before departing, she requested one final meeting with Evan. They stood near the observation windows, watching distant stars drift past as the station rotated gently. "You no longer need me," she said. Evan smiled faintly. "We never needed you," he replied. "You chose to help." Lyrixa inclined her head. "That choice changed many things." "For you too," Evan said. "Yes," she admitted. "My people believed humans were fragile. Now they believe you are uncertain." Evan laughed quietly. "That's fair." She studied him. "Uncertainty makes others cautious," she said. "Caution creates space." "And space is where we do our best thinking," Evan replied. They stood in silence for a moment. "You crossed a line to warn us," Evan said. "You took a risk." Lyrix's gaze shifted toward the stars. "Some lines exist only to be crossed," she said. "Others exist to teach restraint. Humans appear to understand the difference." "Sometimes," Evan said. Lyrixa turned to him fully. "If others come," she said, "and they will remember this, not all attention is hostile, but all attention must be answered." Evan nodded. "We've learned that." Lyrixa left the next day. Life continued. Years passed. The human adaptability doctrine became standard education in mixed-species environments. Not mandatory, but recommended. Humans entering shared space were taught not just laws and customs, but awareness. Sleep training was as normal as physical conditioning. No new predators appeared, not because the galaxy had grown kinder, but because it had grown careful. Stories spread. Not dramatic ones, not exaggerated tales of conquest, but quiet reports of humans who noticed things others missed. Humans who responded quickly to unfamiliar situations. Humans who did not panic when their assumptions failed. Some species admired that, others disliked it. A few feared it. Evan aged, not quickly but visibly. His hair grayed at the edges. His movements slowed just enough for him to notice. He accepted it. Change was familiar now. On the anniversary of the incident that had started everything, Evan slept alone in his quarters, the same place where he had once woken to an uninvited presence. The room was quiet. He drifted into sleep without tension. The dream space opened gently. This time it was not a dark field. It was something softer, open ground beneath a wide sky. There were no shadows pressing in, no sense of intrusion, but there was awareness, not one presence, many. Not predators, observers. They stayed at a distance, respectful, cautious. They did not reach out. They did not probe. They waited. Evan did not push back. He stood, not in defiance, not in challenge, in acknowledgement. The signal moved outward, calm and steady. Not a call for help, not a warning, a statement. We know you are there. We are awake even when we sleep. The observers withdrew. Evan slept through the night. When he woke, sunlight filled the room. The station hummed as it always had. People moved through their lives, unaware of how much had changed simply because humans had chosen not to look away. Evan sat up slowly, feeling the familiar stiffness of age. He smiled to himself. Humanity had not become the strongest species in the galaxy. They had not become the most advanced. They had become something far harder to deal with, aware. And in a universe full of watchers, that awareness was enough. The galaxy moved on, adjusting its expectations, rewriting quiet assumptions. Humans were no longer ignored when they rested. They were no longer underestimated when they seemed still. They were recognized. And that recognition, more than any weapon or fleet, ensured that humanity would never again be taken by surprise in the dark. Even in sleep, humans stood watch.